So there are a lot of other things that I wanted to talk about today, especially what's going on with the transition of power between Trump and Biden. That's not going very well. I mean, I didn't expect it would, but I also didn't expect for Republicans to completely throw out democracy potentially in Wisconsin and just say, hey, we're just going to send electors that favor our guy, even if 5 million people all over the country voted for the other guy, with Wisconsin having over a 10,000 vote margin between Biden's vote and Trump's vote. But anyways, if I get too into that, then I'll just make this whole video about that. But what I really wanted to have this video be about is about the void. It's kind of the starting theme of this channel, I guess, but it's also something that's got me really curious. So there are three sort of main types of voids that I want to talk about, and why I think they're so fascinating. So the first would be the void which exists outside of the observable universe, or even voids within the universe. Places in space where there's virtually nothing for thousands of light years. The supervoid comes to mind. But then there's also the void of the observable universe where you can't see beyond a certain point. It's the cosmic horizon, very similar to very similar to a black hole's event horizon, which is the second kind of void that I want to talk about. The third might be sort of cheating to include it, but I thought there is a lot of similarity between the void that exists after you die and the other two voids that I mentioned just now. In all three cases, you're left not knowing what lies beyond the sort of veil that all three of them introduce in terms of our ability to perceive the world. In the case of the observable universe, I mean, you have an entire section of the universe which may be many times larger than what we can see. This whole section of the universe that you'll never be able to observe because the space is expanding farther, or faster I should say, than light can travel, thus making light from all of those distant galaxies and stars and blazars or what have you. All of that is inaccessible to us, at least for the time being, unless we come up with some sort of insane way to view objects that are, heading away from us at faster than light speed. I kind of doubt that we'll be able to do that, even if we advance by, a crazy amount in a short period of time. I mean, I don't think even a super advanced version of humanity, thousands of years from now, I doubt even they would be able to do that. So that whole section of the universe becomes inaccessible to us, and it's lost behind this veil of darkness, just empty space, a void that you can't see beyond. Whenever I think about it, I always imagine being sort of instantly teleported to a place in space where you can't see anything in front of you. You have the universe behind you, but nothing visible before you. It's kind of daunting, because as far as you know, that void before you is endless. It's infinite. It's kind of why it's one of the reasons why I've made it a bit of a theme on this channel, just with the first three videos, and both the description and the name about the void, the unknowable, potentially unknowable, and the mystery that lies within the unknowable void. Then you also have a black hole, which is sort of an interesting reversal where you know everything that's going on outside of it, but you can't know what's going on inside of it because of this, because of the event horizon, this seemingly apparent void in space, like sort of a pinhole in space, if you want to think about it in terms of the singularity of a non-spinning black hole. And so, because of the laws of physics, with regards to black holes, you cannot see beyond that event horizon. It doesn't allow light to escape, and so nothing can be viewed beyond that event horizon within that black hole. It runs into a similar sort of idea as the cosmic horizon, where space is preventing light from reaching us. A black hole prevents light from reaching you because its gravity is too powerful to allow light to escape, while the event horizon of the universe makes it impossible for light beyond that particular limit to reach us in this part of the universe. It's a weird sort of parallel that the two have, and why I find the idea that we're inside of a black hole intriguing, even if it may be just pure conjecture. It's still interesting. It's an interesting parallel. But to get back to the cosmic horizon, it's interesting too, because just like in the idea of a black hole, the idea of the inside of a black hole, physics may be different, or it may break down in a way that we can't even know, that we can't even begin to figure out. Because, I mean, for one thing, there's the problem of there's the problem of being able to observe it. It's the same in both instances, but it's also the physics which make it so that you cannot see beyond those horizons. It may be unknowable. You know, like we have dark energy, which applies to the very nature of the universe itself, but specifically to these ever-increasing voids in our perception of reality. This ever-expanding cosmic horizon, or should I say shrinking cosmic horizon, this ever-expanding part of space which we cannot observe, that increases exponentially. So you have the laws of physics that don't allow us to see beyond that horizon, and then you have the laws of physics that don't allow us to see beyond the event horizon. And so we have whole sections of the universe which are completely closed off to us. Even though I think that it may be more theoretically possible to maybe figure out the inside of a black hole than it is to figure out the, let's say, structure of the universe beyond that cosmic horizon. Potentially, theoretically. And so, for me, like, I'm a big fan of astrophysics, which will probably become really evident as I post more videos to this channel. But for me, that's just absolutely fascinating, and I'm waiting and intrigued by what astrophysicists may be able to figure out in regards to those two fronts. It may be that we come to understand the universe in such a way where we could reasonably predict what the rest of the universe may be like, how much more universe there is that we cannot see. Hopefully we can get to that point, so that way, even though we can never see it, we can have a good idea of what's there or how much is there once we figured out, the whole quantum physics relativity issue, which would also, in a way, mean that we've also figured out the secret of black holes and how they function beyond the event horizon. Those two, like, once you figure out the problems regarding one, like a black hole, like with regards to the black hole, you essentially, I think, would have the tools to understand the rest of the universe, because once you've cracked that egg, the rest of the universe becomes much more apparent to you. Whether or not we'll do that, that's a huge question, because I mean, trying to figure out the workings of the universe from, a small rock floating in space, that's a tall order. And the fact that they've been able to understand the universe so much thus far, it's pretty amazing. And then there's the third void I wanted to talk about. As a sort of, this is going to be not at all a very good segue, but so this is one where we, as far as we know, do have a good understanding of what lies beyond, which is death. Like, when you die, you cease to exist. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see really any good reason to believe that anything else happens to us when we die other than we just cease to be. We don't have any evidence that consciousness can exist outside of a functioning brain, so outside of evidence for that, there's no really good reason to believe that anything else happens to us other than we just cease to be. In terms of our personality, our wants, our desires, our ideas, our thoughts, our feelings, everything that makes us us in a mental sense. And, that can be projected outwards via our speech. All of that disappears upon death. All that is left is your physical body, but your physical body cannot, it can't think, it can't communicate, in the way that I am doing right now. But then there's that sort of daunting aspect of, once you die, you can no longer experience, you can no longer have hopes, have dreams, have sensations, you can no longer enjoy the world, enjoy the sunlight, smell of flowers, smell of trees, all of that, ecstasy, joy, even despair, and the feeling of regaining hope after being in a state of despair, all of that disappears. And the ability to have new experiences, that disappears as well. And it's scary, I'll admit it, it's a scary thought. Because even though I have heard it before stated that, there's an untold amount of years, trillions of years before you came into being where you did not exist. And after you die, the same thing will happen. But I think, the obvious difference there is that once you're alive, you've had all of these experiences, sure, you didn't exist for all that time, but now you do. As far as you can tell, you, as you perceive yourself, exist. And as human beings, and this is kind of where it kind of maybe starts to lean into a little bit of conjecture again, is that, we're hardwired to want to continue living and reproducing. It's part of what makes us living beings. And so for us, the idea of ceasing to be is terrifying. I'll admit, even for me, that idea is so daunting. And to come to a point where you no longer exist. It's like a sleep that you never wake up from. But it's even more stark because you're not even in your dreaming state. You're still sensing in some way, or you're perceiving, images in your own mind. But upon death and ceasing to be, it's like a dreamless sleep that you never wake up from, but even worse because you're not even experiencing anything. But it's something that you have to inevitably sort of accept, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen no matter what. And so you would want to impart onto the world as much, good things as you can. you would want to be good to people while you're here because it's the only life that you know you're going to live. I know that, for a while YOLO became a huge thing and it was more of a joke than anything else, but I mean, it's true, as far as you know, you only live once. And so instead of using it as an excuse to like do whatever you want, it kind of forces you to think much more critically about how a moral person you're being, how you're affecting the world around you, what your choices are that affect the world around you. Like, what are you leaving behind for those who are still alive and who will come into being after you die? It's, it's weird. The first two voids that I wanted to bring up in this video are voids beyond which you cannot understand what lies beyond them. But in this case, it's one where we would have a very good idea of what lies beyond it, and it terrifies us. But it should also, just as in the case of the other two voids, astrophysical voids, this sort of veil that is placed over your consciousness upon death, that's one where we should also push to learn more about ourselves and how we deal with that inevitable, the inevitable moment from which you cease to be, the inevitability of death. And so in all three cases, you should be pushed to learn more. They should all drive you in some sort of way. In the case of the two astrophysical voids, it's a drive to learn more, to understand the universe even better. And in the case of death, it should drive us to want to learn how to be better to each other, how to live your best life, or to live all of our best lives in concert with each other and with the whole of the planet. I know it sounds very hippie, but when it really comes down to it, it's true. I mean, that's assuming you believe the same thing that I do, or don't believe the same things I don't, which would be in the spiritual, supernatural, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, that's part of the reason why I think lately the concept of the void, as I've been calling it, even though I've been using it as more of a kind of catch-all phrase than anything else. But it's the reason why these sort of concepts have fascinated me so much, because in all three they deal with, something which prevents us from being able to observe any further, but because of it, it should push us to want to learn more. It should drive us in all three cases. And given everything that's been happening in this year, it's like, the attacks on science, on knowledge itself, all the people who have faced that inevitable end. And I'm really not using this as a way to like minimalize or capitalize on all those who have died in this pandemic, but it's like, this year has really, hopefully has really pushed us to really consider mortality, the value that we place on our lives, others' lives, how we treat each other, if we value each other, the world around us, what value do we place on science, on learning, on knowledge. And I guess I'm trying to tie this back into something more positive than, just the infinite nothingness which awaits us. But I feel like it inevitably forces you to reflect on those things. So I personally always like to find that little tiny glimmer of hope, even in themes and in moments which seem the most bleak, because without that, you kind of lose your will to go on. And I feel like a lot of us may need that push to want to keep going, especially considering everything that's happened this year and everything that's currently going on, like the little bit that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. But yeah, I'm gonna stop the video here before it gets any longer, but hopefully I wasn't rambling in a way that didn't make sense. Hopefully my point has come across, and to whoever is the sole person who sees this, I guess let me know like where I was wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong somewhere. I'm not an astrophysicist, and I'm not a PhD philosopher or scientist, so these are really just my thoughts on these concepts, but I thought I'd talk about them. I'm using this YouTube as more of a sort of video journal or something like that anyway, so thank you to whoever watched this, and hopefully I'll be posting more regularly in the future, and hopefully I learn how to edit. Bye.